I'm back.
Can you hear us now?
Yeah.
There we go.
Right,
I think
good.
we're set.
All right. Let me just make sure one thing here before we start. Yep, I can do that. Okay, cool. Okay, let me get the presentation back up. All right, everybody can still hear me, right?
Sure.
Yes.
We have,
Yeah, all good here.
all right, thanks, Bill. All right, we have, we're right at 10 o'clock now, but let me leave a couple more minutes here. We a little light on attendance so far. And if you give me 2 more minutes, we'll get started in a couple minutes, okay?
Sounds like a plan.
You guys can see. Okay, there we go. Okay, very good. Okay. All right, so it's a little after 10. Thank you for joining today for the Widener University SBDC presentation on navigating the SBA Working Capital Program. The goal today is to make it easy for export businesses to find funding. And we feel that there's a lot of people that would benefit from this particular presentation. This morning, we have 3 excellent panelists, actually 2 excellent panelists and a guy who's trying. We have Joe Flame from Fulton Bank. He has a lot of experience in international banking. We have Bill Hawk from the SBA, who handles this particular program for the SBA. And we needed a moderator, so you get me. Bill Pierce from the Widener University SBDC. I'm a certified global business professional and international trade specialist there. So we'll go ahead and get started now. Yeah. This does that. So everybody understands, Widener University SBDC is a resource to the SBA, the Small Business Administration. Our goal in life is to help people start, grow, and prosper in their businesses. We do this through providing consulting at no cost, and it's all confidential, and providing educational programs like these for people in a variety of industries, including international trade or global trade, as we're speaking today, but also health, government contracting. We also provide services to the Latino community, as well as some of the local communities in and around Delaware County, Southern Philadelphia County, and Widener University. We're supported greatly by the SBA, the Pennsylvania Department of Community and Economic Development, the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection, also PREP, and of course, Widener University provides funding to the program. We have a lot of different types of programs. We are a center of excellence in Pennsylvania for health and life sciences. So if that's your focus, we certainly can hook you up with people that are excellent mentors in that arena. And we also recently received the Center of Excellence for our support of the Latino community. We are a SAP Next Gen lab for development of businesses. We can support in the area of EMAP for the environmental side, and also a PTAC for government procurement. So we have a lot of abilities to provide a variety of services throughout the state, and specifically focused in southeastern Pennsylvania. Wide variety of people in our group. You'll see the relatively handsome person forth from the left there. We do have a wide variety of people and experience. I'll point out Tim Daniel, who's always recognized for his support of the healthcare community, and our director, Lennon Agudo, who provides services, and we have other people who provide services, Latino community, and Kevin Takino, who's a specialist in not only business strategy listed, but also is a PTAC representative. All right. One thing, August, if you could keep track of the panelists, oh, I'm sorry, of the question box for me, I would really appreciate that, okay?
Yes, sir, will do.
Thank you. All right, so moving on, okay? I always start my presentations this way. Some of you have heard my other presentations and you've seen this before, but I really think it's an important question, is why people do global trade. And the truth of the matter is that global trade has been going on for over 5,000 years. There's a belief that trading and the ability to swap and acquire goods and services really was behind a lot of the migration that happened that populated the world. In the first century AD, people were already traveling over 5,000 miles from Europe to the far east of Asia, as well as down the African coast. So 3 continents were already doing a lot of trading back in the first century. These trips took a year round trip via camel or some other beast of burden to acquire it. And typically they were carrying packages that weighed no more than 50 pounds. So a lot of work was being done. So it demonstrates how important this was even that long ago. In today's world, it's even more important. There's a lot of reasons why people should pursue global trade, even if they have an outstanding domestic business. Certainly provides more clients. As you know, there's only 330 some million people in the US. If you add Canada, you get to maybe 400 million. Add Mexico, maybe 500 million. There's 7.5 billion people in the world. So it's less than 10% of the world is in our domain. So there's many more clients available in the world. There's new business opportunities, especially for people that are importing to find goods and services that are being provided outside of the US that aren't available here. It provides economic diversification, and we're in one of those situations today where some parts of the world are recovering quicker from COVID than others. The United States is starting to do a very good job, but we've heard about China being way ahead of the curve, other parts of the world never being affected. So economic diversification is one of the benefits of trading globally, because if things are bad here domestically, you have the opportunity to trade elsewhere and keep your business alive. If you have excess capacity or you have access to more capacity, you could use that if you wanted to go global. Also, a very important thing, I'll talk about this more later, you can protect your domestic business. If you're not trading globally, you're probably not aware of products that are similar or frankly even copied from people throughout the world. And by being connected globally, you can get more information and understand better what's going on and where your product sits in a global world. The story I always tell is the Japanese were very good at cars long before they brought their cars to the US. And when they came to the US, they hit the population at the right time, high gas prices, and people looking for more reliable vehicles. And they took the car business in the US by storm. This wasn't basically being monitored, and the US car companies weren't really looking at it close enough and looking at it properly. Last but not least, and this is really important in today's world and will be for a long, long time, it helps create a dynamic workforce. Young people want to learn more about what's going on throughout the world. Our workforce is changing in a variety of different ways. And as a result, global trade tends to lend itself to a more dynamic workforce. So if you want top-notch people, this may be something you have to consider. A fact that supports what I'm saying is that the U.S. Export Assistance Center says that exporters outperform non-exporters in profitability over time. So this is, global trade is a really important feature that domestic businesses should consider moving forward. There are challenges, no doubt, global market, language, customs, cultures, rules, regulations, and taxes. If you're doing import or export, you're going to face with issues around currency, payments, deliveries, product protection, returns and warranties. And the people on the phone today are here to help you with all those things. So when we get to the end, I have a bunch of information about how to contact us. But these are all things that that you can work through. It's not that challenging. You have a lot of help. What you'll need is you'll need a management commitment. You'll need a product or service that's valued globally. You'll need adequate cash flow, capacity, and capability, and you'll need a plan. In fact, today we're going to talk about 2 plans. But there's a lot of help out there. I mentioned the SBA. I mentioned Fulton Bank. I will always mention that there's places like the U.S. Commerce Service, International Trade Administration, the Customs and Border Patrol, the U.S. Census Service, all provide services to people who want to do importing and exporting. And Pennsylvania has some excellent programs through the Department of Community and Economic Development to support exporting, and I'll talk about those a little bit later. You can do this. It seems challenging. It seems daunting. There are things you have to know to be able to do it right. There's lots of people here to help you, and you can do it, but you're going to need plans. And let me talk a little bit about plans here. There's 2 plans that you're going to need if you want to get into global trade. The first one is a business plan, and every business should have a business plan. That's what I do. I help people generate and create business plans, whether it be a 1-page form that outlines the direction and goals that the individual or the company wants to take, or whether it's a 35-page business plan that's needed to apply for a loan or some other support. A business plan is really important, and I've listed here some characteristics of a business plan. If you're interested in talking more about business plans, certainly available to chat with you. In fact, anybody on the panel is available to chat with you on that. But you also need a global trade plan if you want to trade globally. And there's a lot of different things that you need for that plan. I'm going to hit on a couple of those today. But again, that's something that we can follow up and talk about how to pull that together and make yourself very effective in moving forward. And as I said, there's a lot of help. One of the things that I find is very important, a lot of people have good plans in their heads, but they don't write them down. You really need to write these plans down. I'm going to talk about 2 things about global trade, and then we'll move on into the loan program. First off, you need to be able to select a country to enter. There's over 200 countries and regions available for trade. 24 countries and regions have free trade agreements with the U.S. What this does is it reduces your cost or entry. So when you think about where you want to trade, think about these free trade agreements the U.S. already has in place, including the new MCUA with Canada and Mexico, and that will make things much easier for your trading activity. But you also want to know, is the market growing? Are there barriers to entry for foreign-made goods? Everybody wanted to sell in China. It's a big market. The Chinese population does want USA goods. I will say this, US made is very, very valued throughout the world, regardless of what you might read sometimes. US made products are extremely valuable globally. And there are people in countries that aren't able to receive those products that do desire them, but you have to get past some of the barriers that you might face. An important consideration is geographic considerations. Okay, if you're selling heavy coats for the wintertime, you're only about half the hemisphere is going to be available to you for export. You have to think about that. And there's a variety of other socio and economic considerations that you'll have to take into account. So selecting a country to enter is probably the most important consideration you're going to make when you think about trading globally. You're also going to need an entry strategy. Okay. And there's a lot of resources available to you to do this. You want to research your various markets. I'll talk about some free resources that are available to do that at the end of our discussion today. You'll want to select markets with potential for your product and make sense to you. You really have to understand how your product will be used in a market. And you need to consider the specific conditions and regulations that your markets face. One of the considerations is what will be the Schedule B. This is the shipping code, the standardized shipping code or harmonious shipping code that will be placed on your product by the country you're going to export to. And what does that mean? Does that mean you'll have duties? Does that mean you'll have inspections? What does that mean? So you have to consider all these things, and then you'll have to adjust your global trade plan appropriately. One of my favorite things to talk about is your export product. Okay. There's a lot of opportunities here for products that are not available globally, and certainly in a lot of the world aren't even considered. One of the things I always tell people when they're thinking about doing this is, is your product or a similar product available globally? And I'll talk about what I mean on that in the next slide. But, considering consumer preferences, your country of origin, like I said, made in USA is extremely valuable, and stamping that on your package is very important. Instructions for use. Don't believe that everybody in the world understands how your product's going to be used. Delivery considerations, packaging, shelf life. If it sits at the dock for a long period of time, it can be a problem. A story I'll share. My wife is a Chinese citizen, and she exports back to China. Typically, she buys costume jewelry here that frankly was made in China, and she exports it back to people in China that find it valuable. But every once in a while, she'll get a request for cosmetics. We have to make special arrangements for shipping the cosmetics, because what we learned early on was if they get shipped to Hong Kong, even at Christmas time, and sit on the dock, by the time they get to the end user, they're damaged. Cosmetics don't do too well in the sun. So, you have to make sure you take all that into account. So, excuse me, understanding your product export and understanding whether to standardize or adapt is very important. One of the keys to all this is market research, and the SBDC in Pennsylvania will provide free market research through a variety of different databases and systems and resources we have to help you understand what you can do with your product on a global basis. When I talk about differences, I always like this slide. US product has a lot of characteristics that are important domestically, but when you think globally, it's much different. A US product is, we talk about new and improved. Well, when you're introducing that product on a global basis, they don't care if it's new and improved, because they may or may not even know about it. What they're looking for is things that are unique, or they don't have local alternatives. If we offer rebates or coupons, again, that's valuable in domestic market. It's not even a consideration in the global market. The product simply has to be affordable. And Coca-Cola, for example, that I just bought one yesterday at McDonald's, was $1.07, I believe, with tax. If you were in China, for example, you would buy it for the equivalent of about 29 cents in China. Same Coca-Cola, same size, same everything. So Coca-Cola has realized that they can't sell to the volume they want to sell at the prices that we would pay here in the US. There is a difference. On-time delivery and prompt service, Amazon style, is very important here. In the global market, it's much more important that you provide effective communication, because people understand that things being shipped on ships, via airplanes, getting through customs, they understand that much better. And as my wife, tells me all the time, she understands customs in China better than I think Chinese people understand customs in China, because she's been through it. And I have a client who imports from China, and in 3 shipments, she had one that made it through customs. She had one that got hung up in customs, and she had one that got sent back. So, understanding this whole thing about how to get things back and forth and communicating effectively is very important. And last but not least, your product reputation here is very important. In a global market, product information is very important. So people have to know how to use it, what it's for, why they use it. So some of the limited, flashy logos and labeling that you see in the US, you won't see that globally. You'll see more descriptive explanations of products. And I always laugh about IKEA, but anybody who's ever bought anything from IKEA understands that there's not a whole lot of flash in instructions from IKEA. It's a global instruction sheet. There's not a lot of words. There's a lot of pictures, a lot of diagrams. And that's really the way things happen and get accepted on a global basis. So you have to understand that. Your product must stand out to be purchased globally. That's just simple. That's as simple as I can make it. If it's something that people want and they can't get it, you have a strong opportunity to export your product globally. I'm not going to hit on everything on this slide, but I just want to remind everybody, as you think about exporting globally, you're going to have to keep an eye on your brand and be aware of brand piracy. It exists everywhere in the world, including in the United States. It does represent a financial, obviously, if people sell your product and you don't get the money, that's a financial risk, but even could create a liability risk if your name is on it and it's not your product. The legal environment on this is very fuzzy. And for that reason, we always say that product and knowledge theft protection must be an element of your global trade plan. Here's an example. We all know McDonald's, it's part of our national heritage. There's certainly McDonald's in every town in the US. But if you move to China, you probably would buy hot dogs at McDonald's. Now, this is not McDonald's. This is a company and they are all throughout China and they sell small hot dogs, just like the sign says. But the logo looks like McDonald's. McDonald's also is in China, so it's very confusing for people. And I know people that believe this company is McDonald's, but it's not. More interesting, I love this one, is that there's a company in Iran, and we all read about what Iran thinks of the United States, but there's a company in Iran who has also pirated the McDonald's logo, calls it MashDonald's. And I believe it's some form of hamburger, I'm not entirely sure. But again, people have pirated the McDonald's logo throughout the world. So even if you're a big guy with all kinds of lawyers and attorneys, you do have this problem. And it's something you'll have to make sure you consider as you consider your exporting plan. So any questions? August, is there any questions in the question queue?
Nope, none in the chat.
Okay. All right. Well, now we're going to move on into our topic. And again, I have 2 experts on the line today. Bill Hawk is the International Trade Specialist for the SBA in our region. Bill recently joined. There was another fellow who was handling this before. He's since retired. And Bill's coming into our region. And I'm pleased that Bill was willing to join us today. Bill, can you lead us through the slides on the SBA Export Working Capital Program, please?
Sure, Bill. Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Just maybe throughout our conversation, if people want to kind of in chat introduce themselves, be interested to see if there's new to export, if startups, existing exporters. So we just know how to customize some of our comments. But Joe and I are going to go through SBA's 3 loan guarantee programs.
Hey, Bill,
Joe's going to talk.
Let me do that polling for us. I happen to have that queued up right here. So if you guys could go to the poll, I'm going to launch it here. Hold on. All right. Are you planning to trade globally? Are you currently trading globally? Are you supporting companies that trade globally? Or are you just here because you heard the panelists are excellent speakers?
Bill Pierce, while people are voting, I just wanted to comment on your presentation a little bit, and to specify that U.S. products and services are in demand throughout the world, and your pricing can be your strategy should be that your products are of high quality and in demand. So sometimes we see companies that they may give their pricing similar to their U.S. pricing, and they may not necessarily have to do that. So if you do your homework and figure out what pricing is in the country of the person that contacted you, it is definitely worth doing that. And when we're talking to exporters, and they get contacted from somebody overseas to quote a product, and they say, "How much is your price?" There's two main questions that we suggest that they ask, and as a banker, the number one question is, how are you paying me? So payment in advance is a lot easier and better than, well, not necessarily better, but a lot less complicated than, say, a letter of credit or a documentary collection. And then the other main question is, what is the Incoterms? And we could do a whole other presentation on those, but basically the Incoterms dictate when title of goods passes and who's responsible for what part of the freight charges. So that is some information that you would really need to get to quote properly on an international sale.
Come back in April 20th. I'm doing that presentation actually.
Great.
So Bill, just to answer your question, about half are either currently trading globally or plan to trade globally, and about half are supporting companies who trade globally.
Okay, that's great. Well, thank you very much. As I was saying, Joe and I are going to go through the three export loan guarantee programs. These are loans. These are commercial loans that are supported by SBA by providing the bank a 90% guarantee. So the first thing you have to understand is that you'll need to qualify for a commercial loan before these really apply. Joe can correct me, but startups are difficult at times. But most banks are going to want to see at least 2 or 3 years of favorable operating history. When they initially look at the application, they're going to want to see a history of positive cash flow, adequate capitalization, good expertise in the management. So just understand that these are commercial loans that you would need to apply for through a bank, and then the bank uses SBA to secure the loan in the event they're unable to do it conventionally, maybe because of some very tight ratios. Maybe there's a lack of adequate collateral, but just keep that in mind. And Joe can certainly go through and talk about the types of things that Fulton Bank looks for. But we have 3 loan guarantee programs. If you could take the survey down, just so I can make sure that I'm in line with the slide.
Bill, I can comment real quick that there are some situations where we may look at a business that is less than 3 years in business. If the owners of the business can provide proof that they've been in the industry for or doing something similar for a number of years prior. So we may not necessarily turn away a startup, but it is a little bit difficult to lend to them.
It depends on what program to use. It really depends on the use of proceeds. We'll talk about our Export Express, our export working capital, and our international trade loan. Do you want to go to the next slide? Sure. I believe the next one is now. Again, can you put the survey down?
Okay, I thought I did. Is it still up?
You're gonna have to probably close that on your own. Each
Yeah, you'll
person's
have
gonna
to close it
their
on
own
your screen, Bill.
Oh, I don't know how to do that. Okay, I got it. I got it.
Thank you. Okay.
Can we go to the Export Express program first? Go to that slide.
Sure.
There we go. For most companies, even relatively established exporters, the Export Express program is the most attractive because it's the most flexible. The use of proceeds is extremely flexible, meaning that you can, with all the things that Bill Pierce was talking about as far as developing a business plan, using the commercial service or the SBDC for paid services, really any export related activity, and I really can't think of an export expenditure that can't be funded under the Export Express program. There's a big push for virtually meeting customers overseas by optimizing your website. And by optimizing your website, you may be looking at a $50,000 to $100,000 expenditure. You can finance that under the Export Express. Once you find a customer, you can finance transactions. You can finance the initial purchase of inventory. You can finance, if you find that you need to expand your operations, you can finance that, finance the expansion under the Export Express. If you need to finance equipment, buy new equipment, you can finance that under the Export Express. If you need to buy a new piece of commercial real estate to give you the ability to do that, you can finance that under the Export Express. So the only limitation on the Export Express, if you want to go back up to that slide, the only limitation is that $500,000 limit. But that does, when you're looking at companies, anywhere from $1 million to, let's say, even sometimes 10 million in revenue, that's sufficient to get their export business jump started. So this is something that, and this is a delegated program. If Fulton is a fully delegated lender, they can do all our programs under their delegated authority. But if you're working with a smaller community bank, we can get that bank set up to do Export Express, and they can do these loans on their own without involving SBA. So it's again extremely flexible. Think of questions that apply to where you need working capital for export expansion, export business development, and we can talk about that later on. But again, just remember how flexible that program is. Now, as I said, the limitation is, and Joe, feel free to chime in anytime you want. As I said, the limitation here is that it only goes up to $500,000. Once a company starts using a combination of working capital, and we'll talk about export credit insurance, once they start using a combination of that, once they see through education, through people like Joe, on when to pull the trigger and going to open account from cash in advance or letter of credit, once you start becoming more confident in your ability to negotiate and offer terms and using credit insurance, increasing order size, that $500,000 can become inadequate pretty quickly. So the next jump would be to the Export Working Capital Guarantee Program. Joe, did you want to add anything about the Export Express?
No, I think that in our experience, if you are a newer exporter or newer to these programs, the Express is the preferred way to initiate your lending, and it is a good way to get things started. And then, as you said, Bill, as the company grows and as things get better for you on the export side, then we move on to the other programs if need be.
So again, think of questions you want to ask under that program, then we can move to the Export Working Capital. Now, the Export Working Capital, this is more for transaction financing. Individual transactions, you could do a monthly financing of a full pool of receivables and inventory, meaning we call it asset-based lending. In the DC, Maryland, pretty much, Philadelphia, because of the large technology base, healthcare technology, obviously defense, the big popularity of the export working capital is the ability to support standby letters of credit for bid bonding and for advanced payment guarantees. So if you are requiring a certain amount down, there is a possibility that your customer is going to ask for a bank guarantee to make sure that you perform. And if you don't perform, they can get their money back by drawing under a standby letter of credit. If you are in my area, a lot of defense companies, small service, engineering services, cybersecurity services, defense technology services, aerospace services, they're approaching foreign governments, and those foreign government tenures often require a bid bond, typically anywhere from 5 to 10% of the contract. So you could support standby letters of credit through advanced payment guarantees and bid bonding. Joe, did you want to talk about standbys at all?
Sure. So in this case, that standby, the way that that U.S. banks generally do that, when there's a bid bond or an advanced payment guarantee that's required, the U.S. bank will issue a standby letter of credit to a foreign correspondent bank or a bank of the bank that's required by the buyer. A lot of the government agencies overseas specify who the bid bonds and the guarantees have to go through. So the bid bond and the advanced payment guarantees, we issue that standby, and then that foreign bank will issue the actual bond or guarantee on our behalf or on your behalf. And the program, the working capital program, allows you to do that without touching your operating cash, so you can go ahead and proceed with the project properly.
These all the three programs are really meant to provide a company the ability to build capacity. You may have kind of reached the market saturation in the United States. You're operating at 80% capacity, but once you open your business up to a global marketplace, I think everyone would agree on the panel, you're probably going to find yourself in a capacity crunch pretty quickly. So these programs give you the ability to add capacity to your ability to perform globally. You don't want to limit yourself because of working capital. You want to be able to go into a negotiating situation knowing that you've got adequate capital to fulfill an order that in many cases could be beyond what you're typically fulfilling. Meaning in the United States, your average order might be $50,000, but because of shipping costs, because of economies of scale that may be necessary to meet in that local market, they may say it's easier for us to take $200,000 worth. You do not want to say no because you don't have adequate working capital. So it's important to understand these programs before you start negotiating. If you're working with Bill, if you're working with the U.S. Commercial Service and finding opportunities, you should understand these programs before you start arranging conference calls with customers, because again, you don't want to say no. We can, as I mentioned, you might be doing letters of credit, you might be doing cash in advance. Those are fine initially. However, that becomes very expensive for your customer, and they're not going to be really in a position to increase order size because that just takes up more of their capital that they have to contribute for cash in advance or letter of credit. So at some point, you're going to need to offer credit, credit terms 30, 60, 90 days. Again, you're going to need the capacity to address that because it may affect your cash flow. And so working with Fulton, you could arrange for a revolving line of credit so that you do not have to say no to a request for open account. So as you move from letters of credit and cash in advance to open account, again, that's going to be an area where capacity is going to become an issue. So again, you've got these programs, the Export Express and the Export Working Capital programs, to give you that capacity to expand your ability to service more customers on more liberal terms. The Export Working Capital goes up to $5 million. That's our maximum exposure with any one borrower. Before we move on to the international trade loan, Joe, did you have anything you wanted to add about the Export Working Capital?
Sure, I can give an example of one of our customers that started out on the Express program, and probably by the end of this year, maybe transitioning over to the Export Working Capital program. They are a smaller engineering company whose niche in the business was they take small parts of the Saudi oil projects. So Saudi Aramco, for example, or some of the large Saudi Middle East oil companies have large development projects. They were in the realm of doing some small projects in the $50,000 to $100,000 range because they noticed that there were some companies that were not doing that. Prior to getting their SBA Express loan, anything in that one of those customers came to them for that was over their capacity, they would just bid it too high so that they would not get the business. So they reached out to us, and we were able to work with the SBA to get them set up on an Express program. We started with $250,000. The following year, we moved it to $500,000. And again, probably by the next time we do that review with them, we're going to transition them over to the Export Working Capital line, because as they were performing, the businesses they're dealing with were asking them to do larger and larger products, and this is a great way for them to back those projects.
Yeah, I mean, it just kind of emphasizes that now they have, when they knew they had access to this larger amounts of working capital, they did not have to shy away from larger deals. So that's a good example.
Correct.
Just to clarify, just these programs apply to services and also to indirect exports. So if you have an example would be when we signed a free trade agreement with South Korea, the law firms in the United States started getting a lot of legal work. New York, Washington D.C., Chicago, L.A., and so they needed to expand their ability to operate speaking Korean. So I had a law firm that got in. It was an Export Express program, but what they did is they hired Korean-speaking lawyers to service some of the work that was coming from South Korea. All the legal work was being done here in the United States. We considered it an export because they were billing a law firm in Seoul, Korea. So although the work was being done here, it was still considered an export. So services are a big part of the U.S.'s export base, probably somewhere between 25 and 30%. So just please keep that in mind for service providers, and then also to help with the supply chain demands. If you are working with a prime, let's say in Chicago, and that prime is them taking your goods or services and incorporating them into a good or service that's being exported, you can finance that contract under our program. And it does not have to be just one level. It could be multiple levels, as long as you can document that the ultimate end user of your good and service in the United States is exporting a good or service, you can finance those. So I just want to make sure you understand that. I guess we can move on to the international trade loan, and then we can start taking questions of some sort.
Sure.
So the international trade loan, this is to build physical capacity, a company's ability to perform at a higher level of operation. Meaning, if you need to add equipment, you can get up to 10 years financing or useful life of that equipment. If you need permanent working capital to hire people to prepare yourself for another market, I know that there have been companies that have had to completely retool or hire so that they can effectively go into a new market. So 10-year terms for permanent working capital, and for companies that have outgrown their current facility, they can build out or acquire let's say a piece of property next door, and they can get up to 20-year financing for commercial real estate. And under the international trade loan, we now are able to finance the acquisition of a business. So if you are exporting and you see a competitor who would broaden your ability to reach more markets and add capacity, you're in a position to buy that company, including goodwill, stock, and all the fixed assets under the international trade loan. So as you can see, our three programs can pretty much cover any export-related expenditure that you can think of. Now, the equipment, the employees, they do not have to be solely used for export or the real estate. If a piece of equipment is only doing 100 widgets out of the 1,000 per day that are being pumped out, that's fine. There's no minimum amount of exporting that an employee needs to be servicing, or a piece of equipment, or a warehouse. So these apply to overall acquisition of fixed assets and so-called intangibles to support a global initiative. That gives we're not going to really get into too much into the weeds. We can leave that to questions or offline. But that's a quick summary. Joe, did you want to add anything more?
No, I think you've covered pretty much most of it on the international trade loan.
Okay. Bill?
All right. So before I go on to the preferred lender, just wanted to move on. We'll go to questions. Axel, any questions there?
Nope, no questions.
Questions?
No questions in the chat.
Folks, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat or raise your hand, and we'll certainly get them to you. We'd love to make sure people understand these programs fully. There will be time at the end, if you want to wait till then, to ask your questions also. A very good review, Bill and Joe. Thank you so much for doing that. Joe, if you want to talk a little bit about Fulton, as well as how a preferred lender deals with these programs, I think that's also very important for people to hear.
Sure, that sounds good. So if your financial institution is a preferred lender, they are making the credit decision in-house, backed by the SBA. So the processing time could be a little bit faster. And so the way that Fulton Bank generally looks at any of our lending decisions, we're sort of similar on what's required and how those are processed. So for us, your SBA product, we're going to look at it similarly to our conventional products, and that's sort of because, for the most part, your financial institution's going to look at first to do your lending conventionally, because it's the easier way, it's the better way, and if we don't need that backing by the SBA, we're going to take care of it that way. So your lender basically is going to look for certain information for you to apply for these programs, and just every case is a little bit different, but in general, you're going to need 3 years of business tax returns. And those complete returns are generally required. You're going to need the current year financial statements, your income statement, balance sheet, accounts receivables, and accounts payable agings. Your 3 years of personal tax returns are required. A completed personal financial statement. So we do have a template. If somebody does want to see it, you can reach out to Bill Pearson and we can forward that to you to take a look at. There's also going to be, and Bill touched on this a little bit, a business plan or a resume or a similar narrative explaining your industry experience and the opportunity that you're looking at for the lending request that you have. And then generally, what we will look at if it's a new opportunity for us, we would like to see 3 months of statements from your current financial institution in your lending. So that's basically it. I know that Bill Houck, the SBA has on the website some of the other information that's required, some general forms to guide you through those. Do you want to touch base on those a little bit, or do you?
Well, probably my biggest piece of advice when first inquiring about our programs is to either, if you have a question about your lender as where their status is, as far as an SBA lender, and most banks are SBA lenders now because of PPP, but is to call me and let's go through what your needs are. If by chance you are a customer of Fulton Bank, then I would encourage a conversation for between the three of us, and then guide you as to what forms would be needed. Different forms, if it's an Export Express, there may not be the forms are probably going to be a little differently than what you'd be required under the Export Working Capital Program or the International Trade Loan. So it really depends on your circumstances, so that we make sure that we get you the right documentation and not waste your time.
Right, and it is important to make sure that when you are working on these opportunities, that you reach out to your financial institution, you reach out to your insurance broker, to your accountants, to your law firms, to your freight forwarders and brokers, to get all of their input as early on as possible in a transaction, because each one of those partners or parties will be able to bring something to the table to help you and assist you to make this loan process a little bit quicker. So if there is an export letter of credit that may be backing this, and your financial institution can take a look at that prior to that foreign bank issuing it, it does make things a little bit easier so that transaction goes smoothly. And I know that both bills mentioned that something like trade credit insurance will make it the availability to borrow a little bit easier, and you might be able to increase what you're able to borrow based on receivables insurance and things like that. But all of those partners that you need to deal with in those transactions will be able to assist. And again, the earlier you bring them in, the less problems that happen down the road as you're moving forward with the sale and the transaction.
Terrific. Bill, anything else to add here?
No, I can't think of anything. It's every company's needs are different. So we really can't say that the one of these fits all companies. So again, it's really important then that you fully understand the programs and your finance options by getting me on the phone or speaking with your bank. The typical time frame, if you have an existing lending relationship with a bank, it could be as little as 30 days, if not sooner, depending on the last time they've updated your file. With a brand new banking relationship, it could take a little longer, let's say 45 to 60 days. If it's an international trade loan that's involving real estate, that could take a little bit longer because of appraisals. And if it's a business acquisition, it could take even longer. Again, it's just the amount of due diligence increases as the complexity of the credit goes up. So, but it's just important to keep my contact information nearby if you really want to start getting in the weeds on this stuff.
And we will have that post at the end of the session, and we will make sure it gets out to everybody who registered for the event. So thank you, gentlemen. That was excellent. Really good dialogue and really good update. I actually made a bunch of comments myself that I'm going to follow back up with you on, because I had missed all these points. So I will certainly do that. Really, really good. Thank you so much. All right, August, any questions? I don't see
No,
any.
sir.
Okay, so let me move on. So I guess I'd be remiss not to talk about other programs that may be available. Some of you are not exporting directly, as we talked about, but certainly there's always a need for funding, and there are programs available for our small businesses in the U.S., as well as specifically programs for the small businesses in Pennsylvania. Under the SBA, there's still money available under the Emergency Injury Disaster Loan Program if you're affected by COVID. There is a 7A loan that Bill mentioned as we were going through the SBA for any small business. There's a capital loan program called the Capline loan. It's available. And if you're a veteran, there's a Veterans Advantage program that's available to provide money for your business. So there's some great programs that are available for SBA if you're not in the situation to export.
Yeah, and just a real quick reminder, PPP has been extended into May.
And PPPs have been extended into May if you haven't applied. We also mentioned the XM Bank, or Export-Import Bank in the United States. They don't provide loans, but they do provide different ways to assure funding and make sure you get paid in the form of different insurance programs. It's an excellent program to become familiar with, and especially if you're going into places where getting paid could be a risk. And then in Pennsylvania, you have the Department of Community and Economic Development, and they have a variety of different programs through the Community Development Financial Institutes. There's a variety through the state, and they support both local communities and specific parts of our population, including women and minorities. There's a Community Advantage Recovery Loan that's available for communities that are in distress currently or historically. And there's also the Pennsylvania Industrial Development Authority that provides grants and loans for businesses on startups. So all these programs are available to you. They're not specifically tied to exporting, but if you have some challenges, need money in your small business, I would encourage you to take a look at these programs. All right, so we already had the question. So let me move on for the sake of time here. There's also some great non-financial assistance available for global trade. And the best one, and the one I love to talk about, is the trade.gov. I'm going to throw up a poll here real quick. All right. I guess I'm not going to throw up another poll. Oh, hold on. Oh, there we go. How many people on the line are familiar with trade.gov? I'm just trying to find out if we should spend more time on this with our global trade population. All right, it looks like universally no. All right, very good. Okay, so it looks like almost everybody said no. So trade.gov is a website of all things global trade, import and export, from the International Trade Authority of the U.S. Commerce Service. We have a U.S. Commerce Service branch here in Philadelphia. They provide a variety of different services that can help you, and they are free of charge. They have detailed foreign market studies on economics, political situation, and market intelligence for 140 foreign markets, which are provided by our U.S. embassies. So as an example, and I'm going to ask August to handle this, somebody please give me a country they'd like to see information about. First one up, August. All right.
Ghana.
Ghana.
Ghana's the first one.
Okay, that's okay. Ghana's a good one. Ghana. So if you're looking for information on Ghana, there's 44 results: franchising, trade barriers, automotive sector, selling to public sector. And they've done this for 140 countries throughout the world. It's excellent information. And this is really where I encourage people to start their market research as they're developing their strategy and their global trade plan. Another tool that's available, I love this one, are things called, well, the first one is called exporter assessment. And they actually have a tool where you can go in and you can evaluate yourself, self-assess yourself on whether you're ready to actually export or not. And there's a lot to learn. There's videos. They have a template for a plan. And they go into this whole assessment. Let me click there. Are you ready to export? And they break it down by new exporters, which most of us were new exporters here, and a variety of questions they ask. And you can even dig deeper to understand better what they're asking. So I would encourage everybody who's considering exporting to take a look at that program. And then the last one is a program called the How to Analyze Your Product or Service Export Potential. And I mentioned this, that there are situations here. Yes, sir.
If you're trying to show us the other screen, we can't see that other screen. We're still seeing this.
Really? Okay. Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry about that. Let me go back then. All right.
And if you need another example, someone also said India.
All right. So let me see if this works now. Okay, here we go.
Perfect.
Okay, so you can see it now. I'm sorry about that, folks. I on my end, it looked perfect. So let me put Ghana in again. And I was not lying, 44 results. But again, everything you could possibly want to know about exporting or importing from Ghana, including franchising, which I'm trying to get to come up. Can you guys see that?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So really good information available for that program. Can you see this one now? Can you see how to analyze your product or service for export potential?
Yes, we can.
Okay,
Yes.
so now you can see, and these are questions and a lot of things that Bill talked about in terms of not only products, but also services are covered here and give you a lot of information. And I would be remiss if I didn't go back to this one. Let me go here. Sorry about all these monkey motions. But this is a specific assessment tool. You can see that, right?
Yep.
A specific
Yes.
assessment tool with videos for how to assess your business. Are you ready? And when you click on the go to assessment, it goes a step further and says, are you a new exporter like many of us? And it provides specific questions for you to ask, including the ability to deep dive further into that information. So excellent information and nothing better than free and stuff and information like we're talking about today. So this is all free and available to you on the www.trade.gov website. That should be something that's on everybody's checklist. Make sure that you have that available because it's wonderful information, extremely comprehensive, well done. All right, the other thing that I want to talk about are two programs, again, that are available through the U.S. Commerce Service or the ITA. If you have a website today and you're considering exporting, I actually do a 1-hour webinar on this, and you are considering exporting, then the ITA will provide a SEO expert, a website expert, to review your website and provide you advice for how to improve your website to make it better for the countries or regions that you're going to. There is a small fee. Unfortunately, it costs about $100, but for $100, you're getting a lot of service. What's really cool about this is the Pennsylvania Department of Economic Development will provide up to $5,000 of funding to support the changes being recommended by the ITA. So once you do the work with the ITA, pay your $100, then you can apply to the state of Pennsylvania through a global access, the global access program, the GAP program, and you can receive up to $5,000 to make the changes you need to make so you can effectively export globally. There's a big push both from the federal government as well as the state of Pennsylvania to increase exporting. We believe this will increase manufacturing, create jobs, and that's what we want to do. So excellent program there. And last one, if you're ready to actually meet people throughout the rest of the world, the ITA or US Commerce Service provides the Gold Key program. You have to be export ready and 51% of your product has to be US content. Once you clear that, they will actually introduce you to people in specific countries or regions that you want to meet that they've actually vetted. So you don't even have to do that work yourself. And for $1,000 to $2,300, depending on the situation, they will actually get you introduced. They will take you to meetings. They will serve as translators, and they will help you get contracts to the point that you could potentially sign them. So it's an excellent program, and again, very inexpensive and available to our exporter community to help them increase our exports from the U.S. Global trade and U.S. made are both synonymous and are programs that we really want to support going forward. So that's the content of the presentation. August, do we have any questions?
Nope, no additional questions.
All right. Well, I'm going to flip to the slide for the contact information. As you know, I'm Bill Pierce with Widener. I was a moderator today. Joe Flame is the International Sales Officer from the International Group at Fulton Bank, Fulton Financial Corporation in Lancaster. I will get his contact information to you. And Bill Hulk is the Export Finance Manager from the U.S. Small Business Administration, Office of International Trade. He's listed in Arlington, but he covers our region. He's the guy that we want to speak with. So, you know, I'll wait a little bit. A couple things look like they've come in here. Axel, August, any questions?
They just asked for the slides in print, but you will be sending those in an email, correct?
Yeah, so you will receive a couple things. Good question. The links that I opened to show you in www.trade.gov will be included in an email follow-up to all registrants, a copy of the presentation, a video of the presentation, because there was so much great dialogue, will also be included. And finally, the information about contact information for Bill at the SBA and Joe at Fulton, as well as how Fulton supports our small business communities in Pennsylvania, will all be provided to the people who registered for the event. Give me a day or two because it's a lot of work, but it will get out. It will get out this week. All right, waiting for questions. I got to thank you.
Bill, are we able to unmute the attendees at all?
Yes,
If anybody wanted to
We
introduce themselves, maybe there's some contacts out there that people might be able to use, especially for those that are also supporting exports.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I do this one by one, so give me a second here. All right, everybody now, your microphone is open. If you have any questions, I see there is a question from Alice. Alice, go ahead.
Oh, hi. Sorry, I come in late. But I've been looking around information about the trade more like the exporting. I'm interested in trade, export some food items to China, and also professional services as well. For example, medical trip. But I have looking at some successful companies. I've seen most of them, they have, in their website, they indicate they have 10 plus years experience already working in this area. And me, had a zero experience. So is that too late for me to start, like, get to learn all those things? I know the trade.gov has a lot of good information, like step by step, helping people to get into this area. Is that the right thing for me to do? I'm gonna I need some confidence or encouragement, or people can tell me, no, you should not be doing this. That's just really for people. They started 10 years ago, 15 years ago, they're working the importing, exporting business already, industry already. So what do you think?
So Alice, here's my simple answer. Less than 5% of the companies in the United States export. And 2/3 of those either export to Canada or Mexico. Very, very few companies actually export globally. And as I said, there is a strong desire for US made products. I have, again, I mentioned this before, my wife does export to China from the US. She buys vintage costume jewelry and resells it in China. It's been an excellent business for her. I don't think it's ever too late to start exporting. The world is changing. The middle class is rising. There's going to be a lot more wealth created throughout the rest of the world. People are going to want stuff that we make in the US, and they're going to want the innovation and the ideas that the US is known for. So I would highly encourage you to move forward. And I'm certainly here to help. If you want to send me a note, when you have my contact information, I'll get you on my calendar, and we can talk about how to get you started.
Oh, excellent.
I would highly recommend.
Alice, it's Joe Flame. Just wanted to comment that our agricultural lenders, when they're out talking to their customers, they do make it a point to let them know that there are a lot more people outside of the United States to feed than there are inside the United States. Right. So those opportunities are there. So I do suggest that you talk to Bill Pierce. And also, Bill will give you those resources at places like the U.S. Commercial Service to help you develop your export plan. But definitely look at that trade.gov website. There are a lot of very informative videos to help you get started. You may not be, exporting in the next 30 days, but if you take the time to learn and invest in the knowledge in how to export, I think you can definitely develop an export program and do very well with it.
Oh, great. Thank you. Thank you so much. And I also noticed that the government actually supporting exporting, not importing. Is that correct?
Yes. And the logic behind this, I said early on, is exporting from the US creates jobs. And that's really why the government is behind this so strongly. And it's really behind this. If you listen to the loan programs, a lot of money can be guaranteed by the government to support the people who are exporting and theoretically creating jobs in the United States. That's what the whole idea is. Countries throughout the world, as you know, I believe China exports about 25% of its GDP. Canada is similar. Canada exports almost everything that it makes for cars, gets exported. Very few cars are actually purchased in Canada. Most of the car production in Canada comes to other parts of the world. Same with Japan. There's places in the world that do a tremendous amount of export, multiples of what we do in the U.S. And it's creating jobs for them, and we need to do the same here in the U.S.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
All right. Anybody else? Angela, I saw you turn your mic on. Is there a question there?
I wasn't quite sure. Can you hear me?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I wasn't quite sure because I have some ideas and I'm a little overwhelmed because there's a lot of information. So I'm just writing things down. I'm more of a one-on-one person.
Okay, no problem. When you get my contact information, give me a call. Let's get together and talk.
Thank you.
I'm a one-on-one person too, so I understand.
Okay, I wanted to know, do you have my my information to email me?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Yep. Everybody,
All
sure we have the information.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Alice, we will be getting out the PPT as well as a video of the presentation since there was so much dialogue. That was Alice's question, which you get the PPT. Everybody register will get the document. All right, another question. Okay. All right, other questions for the panelists or myself? All right, we'll finish up, I guess, a little early today. Bill, thank you so much for providing all your expert and experience. It's going to be wonderful working with you now at the SBA. And I'm hoping I can get some people directed your direction to at least get the conversation started. Joe, as always, thank you to you and Fulton Bank. You're a great partner with us. Really appreciate all the help and support we get for the things like this, as well as for our clients. You always guys are so courteous and kind. So thank you very much for everything that you guys do.
We appreciate you allowing me and Fulton Bank to be part of the presentation today.
Yeah, thank you, Bill. We really appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day. Be safe out there. Enjoy the wonderful weather.
Take care. Thank you.
Have a good one, Bill. Have a good one, everybody.
Thanks, August.